Alright, this story starts all the way back in 2018. After releasing 2 and producing 3 albums, Kanye wanted to finish off the year with something big. Even though he already dropped his solo album, Ye, that album was only 7 tracks long, so he wanted to follow that up with another album, and this album would be the infamous Yandhi. Kanye would start the Yandhi rollout in early September with the song I Love It featuring Lil Pump, a huge song at the time with its Roblox-inspired video, but just over a week after that song, we would get the announcement of Yandhi's release date, along with Kanye being the musical guest on SNL for the same day, September 29th. The Yandhi post would be themed as an iMessage chat, which is reminiscent to some of the singles he dropped earlier that year for his other unreleased album, Love Everyone. Just something that I thought was interesting. After the initial announcement, we got the infamous Hurricane tweet, but things were somewhat quiet, which for a Kanye release can mean one of 2 things. 1, he's actually working on it, or 2, he just decided to move on from it. Luckily though, we got an update on Yandhi on the night it was coming out. We got a video of Kanye leaving the studio, meaning that the album had to be done, and since he was playing SNL that night, we'd probably get 1 or 2 songs from Yandhi performed there. But let's just say that SNL didn't go the greatest, and before 12 a.m. had even hit, he was in a controversy for a speech he had at the end of the show about Trump. And at 12 a.m., Yandhi did not come out, beginning what the album is mainly known for: not existing. On October 1st, Kim Kardashian announced a new date for Yandhi. The album would now be coming out on Black Friday, and not too long after, Kanye would travel to Uganda to work on the album, where we would get some of the first big snippets of the album through live streams.
This is my voice, pimping the voice, no stopping the voice. Expect the world, 2 boys and girls, bigger the storm. This is the mind, this is the vibe, this is the vibe. I feel alive, I feel alive, I feel alive, I feel alive, I feel alive.
All was well with the album. It was progressing and would most likely be ready by Black Friday. But in the most how the hell did this happen twist, Kanye West almost got kidnapped in Uganda. Okay, not really, but for some reason, the security Kanye was with just didn't trust the tour guides of this jungle they were at. So instead of, leaving, both parties got in a standoff for an entire night until a plane came the next day. And it was here, personally, I would say Yandhi died. Yes, the album would still be worked on and certain tracks would live on even after the album itself, but nothing seemed to be the same after this, and Kanye wouldn't be the same either. After going back to America, the album basically went cold, and after performing at Camp Flog Gnaw, Kanye would announce that the album wasn't done and that he won't be announcing a date till it is. And even though the official reasoning for the album not being ready was him performing with Cudi, I still think the standoff is what caused Kanye to step back from the album, and you'll see why in a second. In December 2018, Kanye did go back to recording in Miami, but almost right after that, he basically disappeared from the public eye. No tweets, no events, nothing, until January. In January 2019, Kanye was still publicly silent, but this was when he would start to invite tons of celebrities out to these private concerts, which we would later find out to be Sunday Service. Sunday Service is still technically a thing today, but it was really in its heyday during the Yandhi era. For a few months, Sunday Service was basically the only thing going on in Kanye news, occasionally getting a song snippet out of it. It wouldn't be until April when we got an update with the album. On Easter Sunday, Sunday Service would do its first public show at Coachella. They only performed one new song at this show, Water, and it wasn't great, but at this point things had been so quiet that just seeing the color purple was a surprise. And of course, after Coachella, we got yet another quiet period. Sunday Service wasn't even going on at this time, but that didn't mean nothing was happening. Over the summer, more and more tracks from Yandhi would leak, so many songs to the point where people have made the leaks into a full compiled album. And while Kanye has never said it himself, people around him did go on record to say that the leaks were beginning to affect the album's progress. But that wouldn't matter much pretty soon anyway. Near the end of August, we would finally get a new post, not from Kanye, but from Kim. This post would be a track list, 12 songs and release date for September 27th. But this track list wasn't for Yandhi, it was for a new album, Jesus is King. Over the next couple of weeks, hype steadily builds and builds until the 27th, where it didn't come out. But on that day, there would be an impromptu film screening / listening party at the Fox Theater in Detroit. Phones weren't allowed, so we don't know exactly what was played, but we do know that music was played, and like I said before, things had been so quiet that anything was just a nice surprise at that point. This event was also a film screening for the Jesus is King movie, which I would talk about, but it's not really worth a lot to the album, but it did happen, and this was the first time it was shown. I'm gonna gloss over the next couple of weeks after, mainly because it was more of the same. We got a few more listening parties, and on October 21st, Kanye would come back to Twitter to announce the album would now be released on the 25th, the same day as the movie. And with everything seemingly set to go smoothly for the album to finally come out, it only makes sense that it wouldn't come out on time. Even though Kanye both said the album was coming at midnight and saying it on Jimmy Kimmel that it was already out, Jesus is King was not out. But luckily, we did get a surprising amount of communication from Kanye and his team about it. The reason for the delay was that the team still wanted to change a couple of the mixes on some of the songs, and once they were done doing that, the album would finally drop, which, to their credit, did happen that day. It was just like around noon or so, which meant that finally, Yandhi was technically out, right? No. Even though Jesus is King was derived from Yandhi, only 3 of its songs came from that album, and those songs being Chakras, Law of Attraction, and The Storm, which became Selah, Use This Gospel, and Everything We Need on Jesus is King. And while the official versions of these songs are alright, the Yandhi versions are just better. And that goes for basically the whole album. It's alright, but it's one of the weakest in Kanye's discography. Luckily for us though, that wouldn't be the total end of Yandhi's tracklist. In fact, almost every Kanye album since Jesus is King has either featured a Yandhi track or almost featured one, with the only exception being Donda 2, which ironically is kind of like the modern Yandhi, with it also going virtually unreleased. But anyway. Some of the major ones would be Hurricane, which got put on Donda and heavily reworked in the process. And then there's New Body, a song that completely went through the ringer, from being on Jesus is King's track list, to being on Donda's track list, to being on Vulture's track list, in the end, not even coming out. That's right, all that to still not be released, but at least with the Vulture's version of New Body, it wasn't Kanye's fault. Nicki Minaj didn't clear the feature, and he just couldn't get anyone to replace her on it. So at least we know it isn't completely his fault. It's still like mostly his fault though. And then lastly, for now at least, we have City in the Sky, which got officially released on everyone's favorite album of 2024, Vultures 2, with cut features and Kanye himself not even being bothered to record a verse on it, which I gotta say is a terrible end for all of this. If Vultures 2 is where Yandhi's influence ends, I would be very upset, but knowing Ye, it's probably not, and we'll keep seeing songs pop up on new projects for the next however many years on. There's also some songs that got released without Kanye on them, those being We Got Love, Freak, and Overdose, which is a recent one. So with all that, if you really wanted to, you could make a playlist of Yandhi songs that were officially released and have that serve as a fake, complete version of the album. It probably wouldn't be very good, but you could do it. And that is it for the video. I know people talk about Yandhi all the time, but I don't feel like enough people talk about the actual making and transition of the album. this whole era is honestly a little nostalgic for me, since it was my first Kanye rollout, and I have a lot of memories from this time trying to follow the updates and what the hell was going on. I remember I was on like a field trip when Jesus is King dropped, so you know, I was literally just like on a school bus trying to see like what time this album was coming out. It was a whole trip. But anyway, I'm rambling. If you want to see more videos about music and about albums, subscribe.